The night was calm, but Mira did not feel calm at all. She walked slowly along a narrow street, holding her coat close to her body. The wind was cold, and the city felt strange to her. Tall buildings stood like silent guards, and most lights were already off. She checked her small paper map again. The lines were faded, and some street names were missing. She stopped walking and took a deep breath. Mira was not meant to be here. She was supposed to reach a safe house on the other side of the city. That place was chosen carefully by people who wanted to protect her. But the city had changed, and the map was old. One wrong turn became another, and now she was lost. She looked over her shoulder. Nothing moved, but she felt watched. 4 weeks, she had been running. Since the day her mother, the queen, had sent her away in secret, Mira had not slept well. She was the queen's heir, though no one in this city knew it. To the world, she was just a young woman with tired eyes and worn shoes. To her enemies, she was the key to power. Mira reached the end of the street and saw a small house. It was different from the others. It was not tall or grand. It had one floor, a small window, and a single light glowing inside. The door was wooden, old but strong. Mira looked at the number on the door and then at her map. Her heart sank. This was not the place she was searching for. She stood there for a long moment. Going back felt dangerous. Moving forward without help felt worse. Her hands were shaking, not only from the cold but from fear. She did not know who lived behind that door. It could be a trap. It could be someone who would ask questions she could not answer. Still, she had no other choice. Mira lifted her hand and knocked. Inside the house, Ron was sitting at a small table, cleaning his boots. He had just returned from a long day and enjoyed the quiet. Ron was a human soldier, but tonight he was only a man at home. His uniform hung on a chair. His life was simple here. No orders. No alarms. No shouting. When he heard the knock, he frowned. Visitors were rare at this hour. He stood up and moved toward the door. His steps were careful, a habit he never lost. He opened the door slowly. A young woman stood outside. Her face was pale, and her eyes were wide. She looked scared, but also strong in a quiet way. Ron noticed her hands first. They were trembling. For a second, neither of them spoke. Mira expected to see guards or someone waiting for her. Ron expected to see a neighbor or someone asking for help. What they saw was unexpected, and it made them both pause. Ron spoke first. His voice was calm and low. He asked if she was lost. Mira tried to answer, but her throat felt tight. She nodded instead. She did not trust her voice yet. She looked past him, checking the inside of the house quickly. It looked clean and simple. No hidden figures. No signs of danger. Ron stepped aside and opened the door wider. He said she could come in if she wanted. He did not push. He waited. Mira hesitated. Her training told her to be careful. But her body was tired, and her mind was slow. She stepped inside. The house smelled of warm food and soap. It felt safe in a way she had almost forgotten. Ron closed the door and locked it gently. He asked her to sit. He brought her a glass of water. She held the glass with both hands and drank slowly. The water helped her breathe again. She looked around. There were no signs of wealth or power here. Just a normal life. Ron sat across from her. He did not ask her name. He did not ask where she came from. He only asked if someone was following her. Mira looked down at the table. She chose her words carefully. She said that some people were searching for her and that she needed time to rest. Ron listened. His face showed no shock. Years in service had taught him how to stay calm. He believed her. He could see fear that was real. Outside, a low sound passed through the air. It was soft, almost hidden, but Ron noticed it. His eyes moved to the window. He recognized the sound from his past missions. It was not normal city noise. Mira saw his expression change. Her heart started racing again. She asked what was wrong. Ron stood up and looked outside for a brief moment. He did not see anything, but he felt it. Trouble was close. He turned back to Mira and told her to stay quiet. Mira realized then that knocking on the wrong door might not have been a mistake. This man was not just anyone. There was strength in the way he moved and focus in his eyes. Ron checked the locks and turned off the main light, leaving only a small lamp on. He told Mira she was safe for now. Mira leaned back in her chair, exhaustion washing over her. She did not know this man's name yet, and he did not know hers. Still, in that small house, something important had begun. A queen's heir had knocked on the wrong door, and a human soldier had answered. Morning came slowly, spilling soft light into the small house. Mira had slept in a chair near the table, her body finally giving in to exhaustion. Her breathing was even, her hands relaxed for the first time in days. Ron sat across the room, quietly sipping a cup of coffee. He watched her without speaking, careful not to wake her. The house was silent except for the occasional creak of the floorboards. When Mira opened her eyes, the light made her squint. She blinked and looked around. The room was simple, with a small table, 2 chairs, and a kitchen corner. Nothing felt like the palace she had grown up in. Nothing screamed danger, either. She tried to remember how she had ended up here. Every street she had passed, every turn she had made, had led her to this small house. She wondered if it was fate or just luck. Ron finally spoke. His voice was calm, steady, and reassuring. He asked her if she was feeling better. Mira nodded slowly. She wanted to say more, to explain who she really was, but the words did not come. She still felt the weight of the secret she carried. She was the queen's heir, hidden from those who would harm her. Sharing her identity could bring danger to both of them. Ron seemed to understand without needing her to speak. He poured another cup of coffee and sat back. There was a quiet confidence about him, a patience that made Mira feel safe. He did not ask questions she was not ready to answer. He only offered a calm presence, the kind of strength that did not shout but still protected. Mira decided to explore the house quietly. She walked slowly to the small kitchen and looked at the simple cupboards. Everything was ordinary: plates, cups, a kettle. Nothing here could hint at the life of a soldier. Yet the careful way the furniture was arranged suggested someone disciplined lived here. She smiled faintly. It felt strange to think of a soldier living such a simple life. Ron watched her from the table. He had been trained to notice small things, movements, expressions, tension. He could see her curiosity and her caution at the same time. He waited for her to feel comfortable before speaking again. Finally, he said that if she wanted, he could help her move safely out of the city. His tone was neutral, but there was a firmness in it. He was offering more than guidance. He was offering protection. Mira hesitated. The city outside was large, full of people, streets, and possible threats. She could try to find her way alone, but she knew the risk. Every step she took alone could be tracked. Every turn could lead her to danger. She finally nodded. She needed help, and for the first time, she trusted someone without knowing their name. Ron packed a small bag of supplies: water, a few dried foods, a blanket, and a map of his own making. His movements were efficient, precise, and calm. Mira watched him, feeling a strange sense of relief. Here was someone who could see the danger without panic, who could act without fear clouding his decisions. She realized she had underestimated the importance of such calm. Before leaving the house, Ron checked the locks and windows. He looked at Mira and reminded her to stay quiet and follow his lead. Mira nodded, gripping the small bag she had packed. Outside, the streets were waking slowly. The soft morning light created long shadows across the buildings. Mira could hear distant footsteps and the occasional voice, but the city felt less threatening than the night before. They moved carefully, keeping to small alleys and side streets. Mira noticed how Ron's eyes scanned every corner, every doorway. His experience as a soldier was clear. She felt a mixture of awe and gratitude. She had been raised in a palace full of guards, but none had shown this quiet, attentive skill. This was different. This was life-saving. As they walked, Mira spoke softly. She told Ron about her journey so far, though she carefully avoided revealing her identity. She spoke of traveling through cities, of hiding in shadows, of the fear that had followed her since leaving her home. Ron listened without interruption. When she stopped, he nodded and offered practical advice: when to walk, when to pause, when to find cover. He never judged her, never questioned her decisions. He simply guided. Hours passed. They stopped at a small park to rest. Mira sat on a bench, looking at the morning sun shining through the trees. Birds chirped quietly, and for a moment, she allowed herself to feel peace. It was a feeling she had almost forgotten. She realized that while danger was always near, it could be softened by simple moments of calm. Ron watched her quietly. He knew she was hiding more than just her identity. He could see the tension in her shoulders, the careful way she observed every movement, the small signs of a trained mind always alert. He did not ask. He simply remained close, ready to act if needed. The sun rose higher, and they began walking again. The city was slowly waking fully. Shops opened, children ran along the streets, and people went about their daily lives. Mira noticed the ordinary life happening around her. She had been surrounded by power and politics all her life, but here was normal life, quiet and simple, and she realized she had never truly seen it. As they moved further, Mira finally asked Ron a question she had been holding in her mind. She asked why he helped her without knowing who she was. Ron looked at her calmly and replied that some things were worth helping without reward. Some lives mattered because people needed help, and he could provide it. Mira felt a warmth in her chest. In a world full of danger, someone still acted out of kindness and duty. By midday, they reached a narrow street far from the city center. Mira looked at the buildings, the people walking by, and realized they were closer to safety. She felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The journey had been long, and every step carried risk. Yet, she felt stronger with Ron by her side. Ron paused at a small corner. He checked both directions carefully. He whispered that the next stretch would be more dangerous, that the enemies might be watching main roads. Mira nodded, gripping the strap of her bag tightly. She trusted him completely now. They moved slowly, staying in the shadows. Mira noticed how he communicated without words, glances, gestures, subtle movements. It was like a language she had never learned, but understood perfectly. She realized that his presence gave her not just protection, but confidence. She was no longer just a hidden heir running from danger, she was someone moving with purpose, guided by a steady hand. By late afternoon, they reached a quiet part of the city where fewer people walked. Mira recognized some streets from old maps. The path to safety was near. She felt her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with hope. She realized that finding someone to trust could change everything. Ron looked at her, smiling faintly. He told her that soon, she would be able to rest properly, that she would be safe for a while. Mira felt a deep gratitude for this human soldier who had answered her knock, the wrong door that became the right choice. She did not know what would happen next, but for now, she was not alone. Mira realized that small acts, opening a door, offering water, guiding someone through danger, could become the most important moments in life. She glanced at Ron, silent but strong, and knew that together they could face whatever came next. That day, Mira learned something she had never truly understood. Trust was as powerful as any weapon, and courage often came in quiet, simple forms. The world outside was dangerous, but inside her small, hidden path, she felt hope again. The city continued its busy life around them, unaware that two strangers had met and changed each other's fate forever. Mira and Ron walked on, careful, quiet, but stronger than before. They were no longer just a lost girl and a human soldier. They were partners in survival, bound by circumstance and trust, moving together toward safety. The Queen's heir had knocked on the wrong door. A human soldier had answered. Together, they were beginning a journey neither would ever forget. The city grew quieter as the sun lowered in the sky. Mira and Ron had spent the entire day moving carefully through streets and alleys, always staying alert. Myra's legs ached from walking, and her mind was tired from thinking constantly about danger. Ron, however, seemed to carry a calm energy that never faded. He walked beside her with steady steps, scanning every street corner, every shadow, every sound. Mira noticed how he seemed to see everything, even the smallest details. A broken window, a door slightly open, the sound of someone moving quickly in the distance. He noticed all of it. She realized that being with him made her feel safer than she had since leaving the palace. There was something about his presence that gave her courage, even when the danger was near. As they turned a corner, Mira saw movement ahead. 3 figures dressed in dark clothes were standing in the middle of the street. Their heads turned slowly, scanning the area. Myra's heart started to beat faster. She instinctively wanted to run, but Ron grabbed her arm gently and pulled her into the shadow of a nearby building. He whispered calmly, "Stay quiet and watch me. Don't move until I say." His voice was soft but firm. Mira nodded, holding her breath. She could feel the tension in the air. The 3 figures were clearly looking for someone. Mira realized that they might be searching for her. Ron crouched slightly, moving silently like a shadow. He glanced at Mira to make sure she was still close and safe. Then he led her along a narrow side alley that the searchers would not notice. Mira followed him without question. She had no idea where the alley led, but she trusted him completely. After a few minutes, they reached a small courtyard hidden behind tall buildings. Ron paused and looked around carefully. "We should rest here for a little," he said. Mira nodded, sitting down on a low stone wall. She tried to calm her breathing. Even though they were safe for the moment, the fear of being found never fully left her. Ron unpacked a small piece of bread and some water. He handed it to her. Mira took it, and they ate quietly. She noticed how simple and calm he was even in the middle of danger. It amazed her. She had grown up surrounded by people in power, by soldiers and guards who often acted with noise and anger. Ron's quiet confidence was completely different. It felt real. Mira wanted to ask him who he was, why he helped her, but she hesitated. She still had not told him who she truly was. If she did, the danger could become worse. But she decided to speak a little. "Why are you helping me?" she asked softly. Ron looked at her without hesitation. "Because it is the right thing to do," he said simply. "Some people need help. Some lives are important. You are one of those people." Mira felt warmth in her chest. She realized that not all people in the world acted for power or money. Some people helped simply because they could, simply because it was right. After a short rest, they began moving again. The sun was setting, and shadows stretched across the streets. Mira noticed that the city looked different at this hour. The streets were quiet, but danger could be anywhere. She stayed close to Ron, following his movements carefully. Suddenly, Mira heard a soft sound from above. She looked up and saw a small flying drone hovering over the street. Its lights blinked slowly. Her heart raced. She knew instantly that this was not an ordinary device. Someone was searching from above. Ron saw it too. He motioned for Mira to duck behind a low wall. "We need to move fast but quietly," he whispered. He led her along a path that twisted through empty backyards and narrow passageways. Mira followed, her mind focused entirely on keeping up. After a tense few minutes, the drone disappeared from view. Mira let out a small sigh of relief. She looked at Ron, and he gave her a faint smile. "Safe for now," he said. Mira nodded, but she knew that danger could return at any moment. As night fell completely, they reached a quiet area near the edge of the city. Small houses lined the street, and few people walked outside. Ron checked both directions carefully. "We can rest here for a while," he said. Mira was grateful. Her body was exhausted, and her mind was still alert. She had not felt true rest in weeks. They found a small abandoned shed behind one of the houses. It was empty but offered cover. Ron checked the locks and windows carefully. "This will be good for a few hours," he said. Mira sat down, finally letting herself relax a little. While resting, Mira thought about how her life had changed in just one day. One knock on a wrong door had led her to this man, a human soldier who had no reason to help her. Yet here he was, protecting her, guiding her through danger. She realized that her journey was not just about survival. It was also about trust, courage, and unexpected friendships. Ron noticed her thinking and spoke softly. "You cannot hide forever," he said. "At some point, you will have to face the people who want to find you." Mira nodded, understanding the truth in his words. She had been running for so long that she had almost forgotten that one day she might have to confront her enemies. "But not tonight," he added. "Tonight, we survive. Tomorrow, we plan." Mira smiled faintly. His words gave her hope. She realized that even in the darkest moments, careful planning and trust in others could make a difference. They stayed in the shed until the middle of the night. Outside, the city was quiet, but Mira could hear distant noises of life continuing. Dogs barking, the soft hum of engines, voices carried through alleys. She felt a strange connection to this place, even though it was not her home. For the first time in weeks, she felt a small spark of normal life. Ron shared stories of his life as a soldier, though carefully avoiding names and places that could reveal too much. Mira listened, fascinated. His stories were simple but full of lessons. He spoke of patience, observation, and the importance of staying calm under pressure. Mira realized that these lessons were exactly what she needed. As they prepared to leave the shed, Mira noticed how Ron checked every corner, every shadow. He moved silently, like a shadow himself. She realized that his strength was not just physical. It was his mind, his calmness, and his ability to think clearly even when danger was near. They moved again through the quiet streets. Mira kept close, following his every step. She noticed that she was learning from him, absorbing his calm and careful movements. Her fear was still there, but it was quieter now, replaced with determination. After hours of walking through the dark streets, they reached the outskirts of the city. Here, the buildings were smaller, and fewer people were around. Mira looked at the horizon and saw the first signs of dawn. She felt hope growing inside her. She knew that safety was near, and that for the first time in weeks, she could breathe without fear pressing on her chest. Ron stopped at a small hill overlooking the city. He looked at Mira and nodded. "We are close," he said. Mira felt relief wash over her. She realized that she could trust him completely. Without him, she might never have made it this far. Mira looked back at the city, her home of both danger and memories. She thought about her mother, the queen, and the responsibilities that waited for her. She felt fear, but also courage. She understood that surviving was only the first step. Living, learning, and preparing for what came next were just as important. Ron watched her quietly. He could see the change in her, the way she held herself, the way she observed the world. She was no longer just a scared girl running from danger. She was becoming someone ready to face the challenges ahead. Together, they began moving down the hill, heading towards safety. The city lay behind them, full of shadows and threats. Ahead of them, there was hope, quiet and steady. Mira knew that the journey was far from over, but she also knew that with Ron by her side, she could face whatever came next. The wrong door had brought her here, but it had also brought her the one person she needed most, a human soldier who would stand by her, protect her, and guide her through the darkest paths. Mira understood that sometimes, the smallest choices, like knocking on a door, could change the course of a life forever. That night, Mira and Ron walked together, careful, alert, and quietly brave. The Queen's heir had survived another day, and the human soldier who answered the wrong door had become her guide and protector. Together, they faced the night and the dangers that it held, stronger for their trust in each other and ready for the challenges that the next day would bring. The early morning air was cool and quiet as Mira and Ron continued their journey. The city behind them slowly disappeared, replaced by open streets and low buildings. Myra's body was sore from walking for so many hours, but her mind was alert. She had learned to follow Ron's calm movements and watch for the smallest changes in the environment. Every shadow, every sound, every step mattered. Ron moved with confidence. He never rushed, never panicked. Mira noticed how he scanned the streets, checking windows, doorways, and rooftops with steady eyes. Even though she was tired, she felt safer beside him than she had since leaving the palace. She had been trained to survive in dangerous situations, but nothing prepared her for the quiet, careful strength of someone who truly understood danger. As they turned a corner, Mira noticed a group of people gathered in a small square. They seemed ordinary at first, but Ron's expression changed slightly. He signaled for her to stay low and follow him around the edge of the buildings. Mira obeyed immediately. She was learning to trust his instincts without question. The group in the square did not see them. Ron led Mira down a narrow alley that curved behind several houses. They moved like shadows, silent and careful. Myra's heart beat fast, but she kept her breathing steady. She was beginning to understand the importance of patience, observation, and timing in survival. After several tense minutes, they reached a quiet street where the sun began to rise higher. The early morning light made the city look different. It was softer, less threatening, and for a moment, Mira allowed herself to imagine safety. She glanced at Ron, who gave her a small nod. He did not speak, but she understood. They could rest soon. They found a small abandoned warehouse at the edge of the district. It was empty, but it offered shelter and cover. Ron checked the doors and windows carefully, then turned to Mira. "We can stay here for a while," he said. Mira sank to the floor, grateful for the chance to rest. Her body ached, and her mind was exhausted from constant alertness. While they rested, Mira looked around the warehouse. Dust covered the floor, and sunlight came through cracks in the walls. Despite the emptiness, she felt a strange sense of peace. Here, there were no threats, no enemies immediately nearby. She realized how much she had missed moments of calm in the past weeks. Ron prepared a small meal with the supplies he had brought. He handed her a piece of bread and a water flask. Mira accepted it gratefully, eating slowly. She noticed how calm he remained, even after hours of moving through danger. His quiet strength was inspiring. She realized that courage did not always roar. Sometimes it was quiet, steady, and consistent. After eating, Mira spoke softly. "I need to tell you something," she said. Her voice was hesitant. She had kept her secret hidden for weeks, fearing what would happen if anyone discovered it. Now, looking at Ron, she felt she could trust him. Ron looked at her expectantly, waiting. Mira took a deep breath. "I am the Queen's heir," she said. "I have been hiding because my enemies are searching for me. I cannot return home yet, or it will be dangerous for everyone." Ron did not react with shock or surprise. He simply nodded. "I see," he said quietly. "It does not change anything. You still need protection, and I will help you." Mira felt a wave of relief. She had expected disbelief, fear, or anger. Instead, he offered calm support and understanding. She realized then that trust was a rare and powerful thing. She had been trained to rely only on herself, but now she understood that even the strongest person sometimes needed help. Ron's presence gave her more than safety, it gave her courage and hope. After resting for a while, they prepared to move again. Mira packed her few belongings carefully, watching Ron as he scanned the surroundings. He was thorough and precise, checking the streets before they left. Mira had learned to move quietly beside him, following his lead without hesitation. As they stepped outside, Mira noticed the city waking up in small ways. Shops were opening, the soft sound of voices and footsteps filled the streets, and birds flew across the sky. The world seemed ordinary, yet for her, every moment was important. Danger could appear at any time, but with Ron, she felt ready. They walked along quieter streets, avoiding main roads. Myra's mind was alert, but she allowed herself to notice the small details around her. the sunlight on rooftops, the smell of fresh bread from a bakery, the sound of children playing in a distant courtyard. These ordinary moments reminded her of the life she had missed while hiding. Suddenly, a sound caught their attention. Footsteps approached quickly, moving with purpose. Mira froze, but Ron gently touched her shoulder, signaling her to stay calm. He crouched slightly and looked around. Mira realized that he was assessing the situation carefully, calculating the risk. A patrol of 3 guards passed by, scanning the area. Ron guided Mira along a narrow path between buildings, keeping them out of sight. Mira followed silently, amazed at how he seemed to move through danger effortlessly. She realized that his experience as a soldier was more than physical skill. It was the ability to think clearly, stay calm, and act decisively under pressure. When the guards passed, Ron led Mira to a small park on the edge of the district. They sat on a bench, allowing themselves a brief rest. Mira felt her body relax slightly. She had been tense for hours, but in this quiet space, she felt safe enough to breathe fully. Ron spoke softly. "We are close to the safe house now," he said. Mira's heart lifted at his words. Safety had felt distant for so long, but now it was almost within reach. She realized how much she had relied on him, and how much trust had grown between them in such a short time. Mira looked at Ron and asked, "What happens if they find us before we reach the safe house?" Her voice was steady, but she could feel the tension beneath it. Ron looked at her calmly. "Then we survive and adapt. There is always a way forward, even when it seems impossible. Fear will not help us, but careful planning will." Mira nodded. She understood that survival was not just about running or hiding. It was about thinking, observing, and trusting the right people. They stayed in the park for a short while, letting the shadows and trees hide them. Mira noticed how he communicated without words, small gestures, subtle glances, and quiet movements that guided her through the streets. She realized that she was learning from him, absorbing his calm and careful approach to danger. As the sun rose higher, they moved again, leaving the park behind. Mira felt a mixture of exhaustion and hope. The city still held danger, but she had learned that with patience, observation, and trust, even the most threatening situations could be managed. Finally, they reached a small street that led to the safe house. Mira's heart quickened. She had spent weeks hiding, moving, and running. Now, safety felt almost real. She glanced at Ron, who gave her a faint smile. She understood that this journey had changed her. She was no longer just a frightened girl running from danger. She was learning to survive, to trust, and to act with courage. Together, they walked the last few steps to the safe house. Mira realized that every decision, every careful movement, and every small act of trust had brought her here. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had taught her lessons that she would never forget. The safe house was quiet, hidden behind high walls. Mira felt relief wash over her as Ron opened the door and let her inside. She knew that for the first time in weeks, she could rest properly. She looked around at the simple room prepared for her and felt hope. Ron watched her quietly. He knew the journey was not over, but he also knew that this moment mattered. Mira had survived another day, learned to trust, and discovered the strength she did not know she had. For Mira, the wrong door that had led her to Ron had become the turning point in her journey. She had found someone who would guide her, protect her, and help her face the challenges ahead. Together, they had survived the night and the city. Together, they were ready for whatever came next. Mira realized that courage could come in many forms. It could be the strength to knock on a door, the patience to follow someone through danger, or the wisdom to trust when everything seemed uncertain. And with Ron by her side, she knew she could face anything that came her way. The Queen's heir had survived the journey through the city, and the human soldier who answered the wrong door had become her protector, guide, and friend. Together, they were ready to continue their path toward safety, prepared for every challenge that awaited them. Mira understood that the world was full of danger, but it was also full of unexpected hope. And in that hope, she found the courage to move forward, one careful step at a time. The safe house was quiet and secure. Mira finally had a chance to rest properly, and she felt her body relax for the first time in weeks. The small room was simple but comfortable, with a soft bed, a small desk, and a window that let in the morning light. Mira sat on the edge of the bed, her hands resting on her knees, and thought about how far she had come. She had survived nights filled with fear, days of running through unfamiliar streets, and countless moments when danger seemed close. Now, at last, she felt a small sense of safety. Ron moved quietly around the room, checking the doors and windows once more. Even though the house was secure, he never relaxed completely. Years as a soldier had taught him that safety was temporary, that danger could appear at any moment. Mira watched him, noticing the care in every movement he made. She realized that his presence was not just protection, it was experience, knowledge, and steady courage that she could rely on. After ensuring the house was secure, Ron finally sat down across from Mira. He offered her a cup of warm tea. Mira accepted it, feeling the heat spread through her tired body. She took a small sip and looked at him, remembering how he had appeared at her door, calm and silent, and had guided her through so many dangers. She realized how much she had depended on him, not just for physical protection but for guidance and reassurance. Mira finally spoke. "I cannot thank you enough," she said softly. "I came here lost and scared, and you helped me without knowing anything about me. You could have refused, but you didn't." Ron nodded slightly. "I did what needed to be done. That is all," he replied. His words were simple, but Mira understood their meaning. He had not acted for reward or recognition. He had acted because it was the right thing to do. They spent the morning planning the next steps. Mira knew that she could not stay in one place for too long. The Queen's enemies would continue searching for her, and she had to be ready to move when the time came. Ron suggested routes, safe locations, and strategies to avoid detection. Mira listened carefully, absorbing every detail. She realized that even though she had grown up in power, she had much to learn about survival in the wider world. As they prepared to move again, Mira noticed how different she felt compared to the first time she had knocked on Ron's door. Then, she had been fearful, unsure, and alone. Now, she was alert, confident, and not alone. She trusted him, and she trusted herself. She understood that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. When they left the safe house, the city looked different in the daylight. The streets were quieter than the center of the city, but life continued around them. Children played, shopkeepers arranged their goods, and people moved about with purpose. Mira observed it all carefully, realizing that life continued even in places she had considered dangerous. She understood that danger was never everywhere, and that with careful observation, she could move safely. Ron guided her through streets and alleys, pointing out potential dangers and safe spots. Mira followed closely, absorbing his advice and learning from his experience. She realized that his guidance was not just about immediate safety but about teaching her to recognize risk, assess situations, and make decisions with confidence. As they moved toward the outskirts of the city, Mira thought about her journey. She had left the palace in fear, alone and uncertain. She had traveled through unknown streets, hiding from enemies she could not see. But she had also found courage, friendship, and guidance. She realized that her journey was not just about survival. It was about discovering who she was and what she could do when faced with challenges. By afternoon, they reached a small hill overlooking the city. Mira looked back at the streets she had crossed, remembering the fear and uncertainty she had felt. Then she looked forward, toward the open land beyond the city, and felt hope. Safety was still ahead, but she knew that she could reach it. She was no longer just the Queen's heir hiding from danger. She was a person who had survived, learned, and grown. Ron stood beside her, silent but attentive. Mira noticed the way he watched the horizon, always alert, always ready to act. She realized that he had become more than a guide. He had become a protector, a teacher, and a friend. She felt gratitude and respect for him, knowing that she would not have survived without his help. As they descended the hill, Mira and Ron moved with care, using small paths and hidden trails. Mira noticed how every step required attention, but she also felt more confident than ever before. She understood the importance of observation, patience, and trust. She had learned that survival depended not only on speed or strength but on calmness, planning, and teamwork. When they reached the edge of a small village, Ron led her to a hidden house prepared for her arrival. The house was simple, with clean rooms and basic supplies. Mira felt relief and gratitude. She knew that she could rest here safely for a while, and she allowed herself to finally breathe fully. While settling into the house, Mira reflected on everything that had happened. She remembered the night she had knocked on the wrong door, the fear she had felt, and the unexpected arrival of a human soldier who would change her path. She realized that small choices could have enormous consequences. A single knock had led her to safety, guidance, and friendship. Ron noticed her quiet reflection and spoke softly. "You have come a long way," he said. "Not just in distance, but in courage and understanding. You have learned to trust, to act, and to survive." Mira nodded. She felt a deep sense of growth. She had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and she had not only survived but learned from it. As evening approached, they prepared a simple meal together. Mira helped Ron, and they spoke quietly about the journey so far. She shared small details of her life, careful not to reveal everything, but enough to feel a connection. Ron shared stories of his own, teaching lessons without speaking directly about danger or war. Mira listened and learned, realizing that knowledge and experience were as valuable as courage and strength. Night fell, and Mira finally lay down to rest. She felt safe, for the first time in weeks, knowing that Ron was nearby, ready to protect her. She reflected on how much she had changed in such a short time. The fear that had dominated her life was still present, but it no longer controlled her. She had found courage, trust, and guidance. Ron sat nearby, keeping watch quietly. He knew that the journey was not over, but he also knew that Mira was stronger than she had been before. She had learned to move carefully, trust wisely, and act decisively. He had guided her through danger, but she had grown through her own courage and observation. The next morning, Mira and Ron prepared to continue the journey. The Queen's enemies were still searching, and the world beyond the city held unknown challenges. But Mira was no longer just a frightened girl. She was a survivor, learning to face danger with patience, courage, and trust. As they stepped outside together, Mira felt the sun on her face and the wind on her shoulders. She knew that the path ahead would not be easy, but she also knew that she was ready. She had learned to rely on herself and on those who earned her trust. She had discovered that even in fear, courage could grow, and in uncertainty, guidance could lead to safety. Together, Mira and Ron walked toward the unknown, ready to face challenges, dangers, and adventures. Mira knew that the Queen's throne waited for her one day, but she also knew that survival, trust, and courage mattered just as much as power. The wrong door had led her to the right person, and with Ron by her side, she had learned that friendship, guidance, and careful planning could change the course of a life. Mira looked at Ron, silent and steady, and felt gratitude, respect, and hope. The world was full of danger, but it was also full of unexpected kindness and courage. Together, they would continue the journey, prepared for whatever came next, knowing that they could face it with strength, trust, and determination. The human soldier who answered the wrong door had changed her life. The Queen's heir had found a guide, a protector, and a friend. And together, they were ready to move forward into the future, one careful step at a time, prepared to face the challenges and adventures that awaited them. The journey was far from over, but Mira knew that with courage, trust, and guidance, she could survive anything. The wrong door had been the beginning of something extraordinary, and she would never forget the man who had answered it. Together, they walked on, ready to face the next chapter of their story, stronger, wiser, and unafraid.